This is 40K Today. More fun than a Games Workshop release party, and with a higher nerd count.
Hello and welcome to 40K Today. This is your 15-minute daily dose of information about our favorite hobby. And what hobby is that? Obviously, it's Warhammer 40,000. We cover every facet ranging from competition to hobby to lore and everything in between. Today is Monday, the 17th of August, and on the show, we speak to another woman in Warhammer. But first, we get an absolutely rad hobby tip from Skiggle. What is a Skiggle anyway? Our 40K Today poll question of the week is kind of a fun one. Are you happy with the change to Old Marines, giving them 2 wounds like their Primaris Battle Brothers? Make sure you come to the 40K Today Facebook page and sound off. We want to hear your opinion. Okay, Skiggle gives us a tip on embracing accents in our painting to develop our own style. Tanya sits down and they talk about all kinds of fun hobby stuff.
I am here today with Skiggle, and he is a Twitch performer by the handle of Skiggle is Fine, and he is going to give us a tip on how we can start to see our painting, maybe not as failures, but maybe as happy accidents. So thank you so much for being on the show, Skiggle. How are you doing?
Hi, well, I'm doing great. It's a really hot day today, but doing perfectly fine as usual. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right as well. It is late, so if people don't know, we have quite a big time difference. I am in Canada, and where are you joining us from?
Singapore. I think that's like a 15-hour difference. It was a bit of a challenge setting this up.
Yeah, so it's 11:30 p.m. where I am. It is not 11:30 p.m. where you are.
Yeah. It's 2:30 p.m.
Yeah, but I'm really excited for this tip because I tend to be overly self-critical, and I feel like I'm going to learn something today. So I'm going to let you take that away.
Yes, I think it's just like when you come back to things, at the end of the day, you want it to look great, and to look great is not to compare it with like other pre-painted models. Say like I know a lot of people like to compare to like box art and like compare to really experienced painters for how well they painted a model. But like as much as you want to compare to them, you gotta understand they've had several, sometimes 20 years of experience painting. And within that 20 years, at some point of time in the early stages or even the mid stages, they experience exactly what you experience. Hell, some of them still experience it no matter what. And it's just that they learned how to cope with it. They learned that techniques to help them bring them back in. They've experienced it so many times that they know how to bounce back. And sure, at their age, they've probably felt starstruck over someone else. So it's completely normal to feel that someone else is better than you and out of your league and stuff like that. But the beauty of miniature painting communities, I believe at least, is that we never really look at it and like compare in a manner that is very like you don't critically judge it like this is better than this and like yours is really terrible. Like we don't usually do that. It's a very how do you put it? People are very open to giving advice on how to achieve what they have. And yes, one very good point to point out is that every lesson you learn online, every person that you go on someone's Patreon and you try to learn from them, everything that you learn, you do not have to copy exactly what they do. I notice a lot of my friends who go on the Patreon and then on Patrons and they're like, oh, I tried to do this technique, but I could not replicate it. And then it's basically this. The patrons are not there for you to replicate and copy, because if you copy it, you don't learn anything. If you don't learn anything, you can't do it on anything else. That's the thing. And if you copy it, it's not your style, it's their style. You will never feel that completeness that some of us have felt when we've discovered our own style. You will never feel that. When you've taken the techniques from others, you put it into your work and you mold it into how you envision your models are going to be, like how you envision your painting techniques are going to be like. And as strange and abstract as it sounds to say develop your own painting techniques, it's not actually that hard. By saying that, I don't mean that it's going to come instantly. it actually comes very naturally, and it may take days, years, months, time for you to figure it out. And it's a constant practicing process of making mistakes and relearning how to cope with it and putting it back in. And sooner or later, you will discover that your little ticks of mistakes actually mix into your painting, and you develop a way of painting yourself. Like right now, I'm suddenly doing a lot of color blending, a lot of stippling, and somehow I'm able to get like really smooth finishes and really nice textures. I didn't know I could do this until I started like learning stuff like OSL, color theory, NMM, and then developing my own way of doing it. There was no way I could have done this like 2 years ago when I was so impatient about it. So
Yeah.
it's there's no reason to feel bad when you can't replicate what someone else is doing, because you're not supposed to replicate what you're doing. That's the beauty of painting.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And I think sometimes we just need to go back to the idea of playing with paint. Like you don't have to always follow it step by step. You could be that kid that colors outside of the lines and get something really cool as an end result.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it.
Thanks, Tanya. Those were some great tips. Today's episode of 40K Today is brought to you by Frontline Gaming. Frontline Gaming is a one-stop shop for all your Warhammer hobby needs, discounted products, American-made gaming mats and terrain, and a full line of miniatures painting service and daily hobby content. And this can all be found at frontlinegaming.org. Welcome back. Our own Tanya Gates got to sit down with another woman in Warhammer continuing along in this series. And I have got to say, when we first started this, I didn't realize how deep this well would go, and I'm very, very happy with how it's going. It's amazing. So she sat down with Kailey this week, and Kailey is all about the Ruinous Powers. They talk about their love for chaos, how she is liking the new edition, and what her tournament plans are for the future.
I'm here for another Women in Warhammer feature, and I'm here with Kailey. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
And I found you on Instagram, and then when I found out that you also play in ITC tournaments, I was like, we have to get her on the show. So we always sort of start off with the same question. So how did you get started in the hobby?
I started through my boyfriend.
Yep.
I had no idea about the hobby beforehand, and we had been dating for a couple weeks, and he showed me his corner, and I was just completely astonished and amazed and also inspired. For our first couple years of dating, I kind of let him have his thing,
Yeah.
and I didn't want to intrude in it, and I didn't want to like change it for him, so I just kind of let it be. But every time we moved into a new apartment, I made sure that that was his hobby space. And then a couple years later, he showed me 7th edition, and
Mm-hmm.
we played a couple games, and I wasn't quite convinced on it. The mechanics of the game was a little weird, and it was just Chaos Space Marine, so I wasn't emotionally connected to it.
Mm-hmm.
Fast forward a couple years, and he was working in his hobby room, and I come across and he's working on some Nurglings, and I was like, "Oh, those are super cute. What are they?" And he's like, "It's Nurglings." And he's like, "Do you want to paint a couple?" I was like, "Sure." And I was like, "What is this for?" And he's like, "It's for Warhammer." And I was like, "Wait, they're not all Space Marines and orcs?" And he's like, "No, this is for the faction Nurgle." I'm like, "Oh, this is kind of cool." And I painted a couple, and from there it blossomed into the love for Nurgle, and I loved it ever since.
I love that you just used the word blossomed for Nurgle because of Nurgle's garden. I
Oh,
love it.
yeah.
So we know that you like Nurgle.
Mhm.
Is there anything in particular about the faction, either the way that it plays or the lore, anything like what really makes you gravitated towards Nurgle?
100% everything about it. I enjoyed the fact that they're in the grim, dark future. There could still be creatures with a smile on their face. And more, my boyfriend was telling me the lore and the stories of Nurgle between the cycle of life and death and the garden and Mortarian's very sad story. And I just empathized with it. And this was my faction for me. I
love it.
embodied Nurgle.
I love it when I hear about people who just like love their faction.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So you've played a few games in ninth.
Mhm.
How have you liked the new edition?
I love it. I didn't realize I was building a 9th edition army in 8th edition.
I feel that way too, actually.
Mhm.
Strangely enough. Yeah. What factions have you played against in ninth? Have you found that there's any like boogeyman lists?
I just played Raven Guard and I just lost to them, and that was very scary, but that was just a lot of shots, a lot. I played quite poorly. I was quite nervous. He is from Europe and he's played in a lot of tournaments, so I think that my nerves caught up to me with that. But I've played Sisters, I've played Necrons, and I've played Alpha Legion. I've also played Khorne. And since 9th is more objective secured, and the points are more on holding objectives, it's been really great with Nurgle Demons because they like to be resilient, so they like to stay on the table.
Yeah, and my army is the complete opposite. I have no resiliency whatsoever. So I'm tweaking my list, but I have an idea of where I want to go with that.
It's a constant tweak system. You gotta like fine tune it. Like, I'm
Yeah.
constantly back to the drawing board. Like, okay, that didn't quite work there, so I'll change it a little bit up there. My boyfriend keeps telling me to like, don't change your army list, but I kind of want to and just play around, tweak it a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, my coach is also like that, like play the same list but make minor tweaks
Mhm,
to it
right.
along the way. So in general, like the core, I'll have like 1,500 points that stay the same, and then I'll sort of
Mhm,
swap things out in that like last 500 points to kind of see where I want to go with it. So,
mhm.
so you're sort of still playing the same list. It's
Yep.
just, slight differences.
Mhm. And since Engine Wars came out,
Mhm.
and I've been playing with Exalted Greater Demon, the Great and Clean ones. They've been so
Mhm.
much fun, randomly rolling, and then like, oh, I get a disgusting resilience of 4, or they're tough 8. It's like, okay, they're
Oh.
monsters now. Okay, sweet.
Oh.
They're essentially
Uh,
knights, I guess, on the table, so that's fun,
Yeah. So the ITC season is a little bit of a wash this year.
right?
Do you have any plans of like doing any big events or anything like that?
Considering where I live, there's nothing going on. So probably for the rest of the season, not. But lots of practice, lots of playing with people, honing my skills, and then definitely for next season, if especially with the COVID restrictions get a little bit lifted and a lot more comfortable, I would love to travel the country and play in other majors around, well, there
Yeah,
probably won't be majors, but at least other tournaments.
yeah. I know we were talking about meeting up at Wet Coast, and
Right?
I wasn't gonna make it to that one, and then they
Oh,
canceled it anyway. But maybe next year.
I hope so.
Yeah, maybe next year. Anyway, it's been so great having you on the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure.
I absolutely love how more and more women are finding their way to this fantastic hobby. Okay, 40K folks, let's get pumped up. It's time for Model of the Day.
It's the model of the day, the model of the day, the model of the day.
A regular contributor to Model of the Day seems to be friend of the show, Eric Festa or Colonel Festus on Instagram. This week, we get to feature the emo boy himself, Shrike. And wow, does he look cool. The black armor and white accents are both done beautifully, and it's seamlessly blended together. I love the small details like the subtle glow effects from the stabilizer fins, and the fact that it looks like he's got gel in his hair. True story, folks. You should check it out for yourself. So if you have a photo or a model you think we should feature on the show, tag it with 40K Today on Instagram. We'll find it and we'll feature it on the show. And that's it for today. A big thanks to our content producer, Alex Boehner, our amazing social media Wonder Woman, Tanya Gates, and our technical producer, Seamus Ronan, for all their hard work once again in putting the program together. And I want to give a special shout out to the team. Some of you may have noticed that I was missing all of last week, and that's because we had a legitimate hurricane in Iowa where I lost power, and because everybody lost power, the cell towers were overwhelmed. And so I had very limited access to internet for, I think it went out Monday afternoon at 11 a.m. and I didn't get it back until sometime on Saturday. That gives you any sort of idea. So those guys did a great job of holding down the fort. And a special shout out to Tanya and Seamus, who both really went above and beyond to make sure the show went on. So if you guys get a chance, make sure you thank those guys. If you like the show and you'd like to help us out, we'd love it if you left us a review. Those reviews help people find the show, and we're extremely grateful for every one of those. Okay, until tomorrow for the 40K Today team, I'm John Damaris, and that's what's happening in 40K Today.